Welcome to the All-Inclusive Podcast, a podcast that delves into the world of inclusion, from accessibility all the way through to diversity.
Today we are joined by Will Paterson, the CEO of the revision app EdPlace. Will created this award-winning learning app to help students with dyslexia overcome the challenges they face at school. As dyslexics, Will and Ross know firsthand the challenges students can face, and this has inspired them to take action. EdPlace provides Recite Me accessibility support online to help students to read educational resources. In the past year, 51,000 students have used the Recite Me toolbar on the EdPlace app, which is brilliant to see. Now let's jump straight in. Thank you for joining us, Will.
So, Will, thank you very much for joining us. And just like to kick off, could you give us a background of yourself in your organisation and the experience with dyslexia?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Will. I'm founder and CEO of EdPlace. What we're all about, we're on a mission to provide parents with the best at-home learning support. I think at-home learning was not really a phrase that people had much familiarity with, but massively do now. But really where we sit is providing the best support outside of school, wherever school is just not giving enough for whatever reason. And obviously that includes dyslexia, but there are all sorts of reasons for that. So really founded the company off the back of the ability to combine a whole load of technology together with some great content, design it specifically for parents to enable them to solve that massive pain point in terms of like giving them some extra support. So we've got a platform that is from year 1 to GCSE, maths, English and science. We also do 11+. It's right the way across the national curriculum, and we also really focus in on the exams, so GCSEs and SATs and grammar school entry for 11+, those kind of pinch points where you really need extra support, but then obviously you need support throughout your whole academic journey. So that's what we do. My background is not in education. I'm not a teacher or anything like that. And we work with loads of great educators, but for me that sometimes is a really helpful thing because our target market, generally speaking, isn't. My background's in finance, and ran a previous tech company before that, and just kind of kicked me on to go and found EdPlace basically. So that just gives you a little bit of a summary.
Yeah, I was just about to say it's a great step as well, and I personally see home learning expanding massively, particularly with the shift in COVID, because we're all starting to realise that we don't necessarily have to be in a place to do the job now. And I think as COVID kind of subsides, and hopefully we're on the home straight, even though
we'll see.
Cases are going up, but hospitalizations are still relatively low. It's changed my thinking, with regards to, do I have to go and book onto a course, or can I do something back in my house? And prior to this, I'd always think I'd have to be kind of in a place to do it. And I think parents with kids as well will start thinking and realizing that more.
Yeah.
And if you look back to what we do, our whole ethos is people with dyslexia, visual impairments should be treated as individuals.
Yeah.
Not put into a group, not kind of like we're educating for this group of people that's not dyslexic, and because you're dyslexic, you're going to kind of probably have problems. So there's that, but we'll also push massively on content customization, that everybody's experience of information is slightly different, so it should be customized for it. I'm doing a weird link here, by the way, right?
Yeah.
But essentially, you're doing that in a way because everybody has different educational needs based on loads of different factors, from regards to the natural skill level, genetics, what the interests are, how maybe skilled the parents are at some things. And what you allow people to do is to customize their kind of learning experience outside of school. So I just kind of saw weird.
No, 100%. And that was the thing that always attracted me. One of the things that attracted me to the whole space is, you've got to have the content. You've got to have the content that matches, that's got the depth and the quality and the relevancy as much as you would do in like a traditional book. But then as soon as you digitalize that, there's so much you can do to then, as you say, customize it, to personalize it specifically for that student's needs. And it's such a complex problem. There's, but you can really start to break that down for all sorts of individual needs. And obviously we've got all sorts of different use cases of students who come to us, whether they're actually really gifted and they're not being challenged enough, or they've just fallen behind, they've lost a bit of confidence in a particular subject, and the parent can come and just help them build that back up and use a tool like ours to do that. Or obviously, they are dyslexic and they need they need some extra support there. So customizing it with that, making sure they can access the content, but then, as you say, making sure that the content is the right content served at the right time to really unlock. And it's as simple as just getting one answer right, or a handful of an activity right, can be the turning point of oh, I love maths, or I love this, I've got this, and then you're off. It's just like those little, and that's that's the sort of the real magic that we're trying to address. And once we can definitely do that with digital content, which is amazing. But yeah, also just picking up with what you said about home learning and that space. I mean, it's obviously been just such a tough, interesting year.
Big time.
So many people have just been kind of fatigued, I think, about the whole, particularly with the second sort of school shutdown. It's so full on for parents. But what I really hope, and kind of what we are seeing, is that actually, I can do this, and there are things out there that actually, I don't need to be a teacher. There are things that can guide me through that, and actually, it's really empowering. I can unlock some of this stuff with a few simple steps. So yeah, it's exciting times for sure.
Because if I think back to my years in college, which is it's quite a long time ago, and I'd done an engineering NVQ, but then I was following a career in athletics, and I was nationally ranked. So I decided to take a year out and almost go revisit, do A levels, but revisit the GCSEs that that I didn't do very well in. And I didn't realize I was dyslexic then. So obviously I was doing bad in English and the likes of that. And I didn't realize, but what you guys provide is I was looking for before it existed. So I would get into college early, and I would try and find as many tutorials online, almost for extracurricular. And those days, the whole computer lab shared a 10 meg connection. So, and I'm just thinking, I've just put that together and thought, what I was looking for then is I didn't want to be bad at something. I'm super competitive, that's my sports background, and I wanted something like that. So I just think it's great that what you guys do and what other people's do in your sector, it's so widely available now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's affordable broadly, and we're working on ways of actually opening it up and identifying students who won't have access to it, to give them free access to it. We'll talk about that another time. But yeah, it is, you're absolutely right, it's widely available. And yeah, you mentioning athletics, we've got a few customer insights from people. We've got Ryan, he's a skier of all things, out in Austria. He goes out there and he uses the tool to help him keep up with the schoolwork in it. So there's sort of those quite high usage cases, but it is fantastic. It's amazing. It's so heartwarming to hear that you can, as a young kid, you can follow that dream. You can follow your professional sporting dream, but also keep up with your schoolwork. And yeah, to hear that the tool does stuff like that and all sorts of other things is kind of,
I would have loved that.
It's a nice thing to do. Yeah.
This gives me English teacher. She was good actually, but we didn't
What's
realize.
that?
I says that I would have loved that back in the day. Anything to get away from Mrs. White. I'm just joking of the English teachers that give me a hard time,
Absolutely. Well, sounds similar to me.
So it probably leads quite nicely onto dyslexia. You're dyslexic yourself. Can you describe what it kind of means to you? This is a very kind of open-ended question. So
sure.
Describe what it means to you and your own experiences of being dyslexic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this, it's kind of why I'm sit here talking to you, obviously, certainly define the journey that I'm on now. And yeah, I think mine's probably a very common story with a lot of dyslexics. But I was incredibly fortunate. So when I went to, I think I was about 7 or 8 in a school, and I got tested for dyslexia. My mum tested me for dyslexia. She'd heard all about it independently at school. I was really struggling at school with everything. I was kind of in the bottom sets. She went to the headmaster and said, look, he's dyslexic, he needs extra support. And, this was something we've always lived with me, which was he turned around to my mum and said, there's no such thing as dyslexia, he's just thick. And, and that's been quoted everywhere, right? It's lots of people have heard that. And I was just in a very fortunate position. I came, my parents sort of had the ability to put me into the private school system. I was in the private school system. So literally the next day, I just was taken out of school and put into another school. And then I went to another school, which was really just all about dyslexia, but it was tiny. It was like 20 pupils. And it really served me well. But then I wanted to do sport. I wanted all the extra stuff. So I moved to another school, which was a feeder to a larger private school. And it had like dyslexic support. And there I did sort of extra English rather than drop the language. I didn't do any French or anything like that, just did extra English. But I found basically at that school, if you were dyslexic, you were just in the bottom sets. Like that was it. You were just pigeonholed down there, and I couldn't grow. I wasn't challenged. And I got to my GCSEs, and I got some decent GCSEs. And again, my teacher at that school said, well, because of where you are, you can only do 2 A levels or a GNVQ. Nothing wrong with that. But I knew I could do more. I knew if I wanted to go to a decent university, then I needed to do 3 A levels. So again, I left the school, got taken out of that school, went to another school. And and then I did my 3 A levels. I got really good A levels. I went on and I did economics, business economics, at Exeter Uni, and I got a 2-1. And the kind of rest is history. So an amazing kind of personal journey and personal experience. But there are kind of 2 things that really stood out. One was I had amazing parent support, and that's the real driver of this business and that focus. As I say, I came from a point of privilege. I had my parents had the means to be able to say, right, that's not good enough, I'm going to move you here, and there just wasn't that availability for most people. That was a massive thing. And then the other thing was I obviously with that support, I just had this inner belief and inner confidence that I wasn't thick, there's this, or that the system was kind of wrong, and actually, screw you, I'm going to prove you wrong. And that's exactly what I did do. So yeah, and I think that's an amazing thing that dyslexics have. Is almost, when I look back at it, it's almost a gift. You never, with my own kids now, I wouldn't prescribe it. I never want them to see them sort of suffer or challenge or otherwise. But I look back at it and think, wow, what an amazing thing, because that taught me resilience. It taught me that hard work and application just can motor you on, and just set me up for life outside of school. So yeah, interesting one. I think it's something that's quite common with a lot of dyslexics, and
it's similar, different to my story actually.
Yeah.
It's like I had the same experiences where I said to the teacher, I think I'm dyslexic, and she said, don't be stupid. And to be fair to her, then she did pass my English paper to a special needs. I don't even know the proper name, to be honest with you. There's some probably
coordinator or something. Yeah,
probably some politically correct name now. I don't think you can even use special needs. And she said, he's not dyslexic. He just thinks ahead of his writing. So I was like, oh well, I guess I'm not dyslexic. So I went all the way through the education system, and it was obviously I gravitated towards like engineering because it's not particularly English. The only bad thing is that over time they decided that, you know, engineering should be more about real life challenges. So they kind of baked a lot more kind of like English and conceptual stuff, like there was a narrative behind questions as opposed to like you got an RC, DC, you know, calculate the variable, whatever. But the disparity with me was before the exams, there was people coming to the library where I was studying for me to show them how to do it. And it was getting around the class as go to Ross because he can nail this. But these people were outperforming me by 20% in the exams. And it was the final year when I'd worked so hard, and I got a third class degree in the end, and I thought this just doesn't make sense. I become president of the student union, so I was kind of still very much like integrated into the education structure, although technically I had graduated. And yeah, I'd done a test, and you know they stopped at the fourth test, and there should be 5, and they were like, "Ross, you're dyslexic." And I was like, "Well, that makes sense."
Yeah.
But reflecting on your story, what I think it does do is it caused me to go into business. And you know, this is just something I've literally just realized. You know, I've always kind of been ambitious, but when you asked me when I was finishing me years as president of the union, what do you want to do? My answer was, I want to go into business, and I'm going to go into, I think it was athletics clothing at the time, which I don't do now, and web development, web design, which, you know, I did get into software. If you ask me the reasons why, I would say because you can be twice as good of a marketeer as the person next to you, but if you're working for somebody else, you're very rarely on twice as much of the wage. But that fits in the kind of our both experiences, because that is basically saying the system can't measure the skill.
Yeah.
The education system can't measure the skill of a dyslexic with the way the exams and everything's set up. And I carried that into like adult life to say, well, you know, why would I do a job where I can work twice as hard but probably get worse or less pay than somebody else because it's hard to measure? So that's just an interesting reflection, to be fair.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I got into business, and I think it served as well, particularly because eventually, you know, we got into the toolbar because of my own experiences and wanted to kind of do our bit to make sure people who access content, you know, can access it in a way that's kind of more accessible.
Yeah, there's something coming from like deep down inside, which means that you're always presented with different choices of which route are you going to go. And I suspect you're sort of similar to me, and sometimes I question why when I'm in that pain point, but I want that challenge. I'll go for that challenge. I'm just sort of, you know, and for me, it definitely comes through from my school experience and others for sure. But yeah, so I'm half grateful for it. Depends what happens on that day.
I'm exactly the same. Sometimes I'm like, oh God, you know, really, did it have to be that difficult? And sometimes I'm like, yeah, it's a gift. But interesting, you said like it was almost like a finger up to the system. You said that is almost like the darker side of dyslexia, and that, to me, my understanding, there's so many dyslexics in prison, and they did one survey. I can't even remember which prison it was, but they've done dyslexia tests, and 85% of the population was dyslexic. So, you know, I mean, you were 10 to 15%. But what I think happens is that you come through the education system, and you're kind of like, whatever you like, you tend to be like, screw you to the system. And the screw you can be, we're going to build businesses like we can and change people's thinking and not let the system get. But the darker side is the system's against us. Why should I even follow the rules? You know, and that sometimes for some people can lead down a path to criminality, unfortunately, because it's the system's against them, so they'll fight against it in any way they can.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Sorry, I mumbled a swear word. Hopefully, no one can hear that when you pulled out that stat. Because I haven't heard that before about, you know, the prison population. That is, I mean, it makes total sense to me, but it is quite staggering. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, certainly in my experience, the sort of, again, that kind of support I got meant that I was able to channel it in a FU kind of setup where, you know, I had that guidance. But if I didn't, I could have easily gone the other way and just like I had nowhere to sort of go. And as you say, I could have gone in a very negative way. And still the same person, and that's a massive shame. So I mean, you start to add up the costs, the real cost of like, you're going to talk obviously about policy or things that the education system can do, but stuff that you can't measure, but the overall, if you're just looking at it from like an economic standpoint, like the investment in dealing with special educational needs and all the rest of it, that if you don't, the cost of that is, what as you say, 85% in prison. That's just, even before you even got anything where it's the right thing to do anyway.
What support does EdPlace and ReciteMe provide children with learning difficulties?
Sort of overall, it's really like we discussed. It's just about providing the best portal for a parent or a guardian to assist in a child's learning. So it's really trying to make it as time efficient as possible, as we discussed, like providing that kind of personalized content recommendation that really focuses in on the right area, but really importantly, it just gives parents the confidence to get involved with their education. So that's the great enabler, which is you can come in and support your child through the platform. That's just the overarching thing that it does. Within that, we're always trying to make sure that, as I say, the student's on the right level. So we just do simple things like, we don't actually show the student what year group they're operating in. We'll obviously show them as they're leveling up, but it means that if you are struggling with a particular topic, you can drop down a year group and a few levels, start getting those 80, 90, 100% scores, and then I can do this. And it's a simple thing of like building you back up. But if you can do it and that you're 2 year groups behind, you're like, well, yeah, great, I got 100%, but I'm in year 7 and that was a year 5 activity. It's just really simple stuff like that we do. And then obviously we've also it's just been amazing since it's just given us so much more than we could ever have imagined, to be honest, when we just integrated the toolbar really simply. And that's just been massive for us and our customers. And it just sits on top of all of our educational content. We've got a little accessibility toolbar on the side, and then ReciteMe loads up. And obviously it's just got a huge amount of flexibility for all students, basically. So that's been a absolute massive one for us, finding you guys and integrating that.
Fresh on the press. 55,000 users.
It's amazing.
The month of May.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And for me, it's all about content customization. So, it's very clear from our discussion here, our needs are very, very individualized. And the toolbar allows the experience. I mean, it's almost like I'm trying to sell it here, and I'm not, but I'm talking from a holistic point of view. It allows somebody who's dyslexic to kind of understand that content in a much better way. People who are visually impaired to see it in a much more contrasting way. So,
so I mean, we're doing stuff like at the moment. I mean, there are all sorts of initiatives we're doing, but we're involved, for example, in the National Tutoring Program, which has had a lot of press, obviously. Big initiative to help students catch up, and so what we do is we provide assessment functionality to help assess the student before and after, but most crucially before. So a student coming in, we can identify whether the sort of gap analysis is essentially what topics they need to work on. And so it's really important to help guide that tuition and give that individual student a sort of 15-hour block of tuition. Fantastic. But we have the toolbar installed on all of those assessments, and it means it just opens that up. If we didn't have that, then those students who are most in need of catch up wouldn't be getting that assessment, because they wouldn't be able to access that assessment, which wouldn't then be able to identify those key areas for the tuition. So it really is, it really helps us unlock. And there's so many other examples, but it's so, it makes such a huge difference. That's just one example really at the moment.
So what do you hope for the future of the education system with people with learning difficulties? That's a good
one. I mean, I think mine is kind of, I think my view on that is it's more general. I think it's the whole system. So I mean, and it encompasses, you know, learning difficulties. So really, I mean, yeah, things that get talked about a lot, but not a lot happens. And you know, maybe the COVID will present that opportunity. But one is an updated curriculum. You know, we have a platform that, you know, fits and is hyper relevant to the curriculum, but making it much more relevant to the job market and skills for the future. Not just the job market now. It's out of date for what the market is now, but it's, you know, it's definitely out of date for the future in my view. And you know, new tech, new ways of working. You know, the curriculum basically needs to, in my view, massively needs to catch up, and that really helps, in my view, really helps people with learning difficulties, because actually, I think some of the skill set that's locked up in that is actually, you know, is what a workforce needs. So just updating the curriculum, making it more relevant, making it much more future-proof to the next stage of the skills that the country needs. I think that's a massive one. And related to that is the exam system. I'm not saying, you know, get rid of exams completely, absolutely not. But we need to have stuff that's more focused on vocation. It's more focused on, you know, it's not about exam techniques and knowledge and holding on to information. I just think, you know, it's becoming less and less relevant. What is relevant is problem solving, you know, having a base understanding and then solving a problem. That's what firms are doing, businesses are doing on a day-to-day basis. You know, if I don't have this information, I'll go and find it, and then I will provide a solution to that problem. And the exam system just doesn't replicate that. And again, you know, I think dyslexics, for example, are phenomenal at doing that, and have got so much to offer companies. So if we can, so it's something that benefits the whole education system, but it's actually going to benefit those with learning difficulties as well, massively. And then the other thing, I think, so three things, you know, curriculum, exams, and then the final thing is like adoption of technology. Obviously, we're a tech and a content platform. You have an amazing tech product. The investment in the school system to like actually put in great technology, but give teachers enough time and training to understand how to best utilize technology. There are obviously some really amazing leading schools that are using it to great effect. Mm-hmm. But I think there's just, and you know, things that I've seen from the lockdown has been amazing, you know, the adoption of new tech, but there's so much more that can be done. So like, you know, a lot of training within the school system and support to adopt platforms that actually genuinely work is another sort of big piece. So sorry, a bit of a ramble, but I
get it. 100%.
You know, those three things, I think, you know, things that I think are really important for the future.
Because for me, I think you understand the education system better than what I do, but I always kind of try and choose like something very high up that would filter down, and I would say treating people as individuals. And if they adopted that strategy at the core, every person would kind of have to be almost kind of like individually assessed for their individual needs, whether they're dyslexic or not. Because you'll get people who you're on a scale and you might kind of like fall into the scale that's kind of not, they wouldn't register you as dyslexic, but you still technically need a lot of help. And if you just done the exams, you would probably be failed by the system, but they probably couldn't put a label on you. So for me, it's all about, you know, like treat people as individuals. Like there was so many things that I was good at school that it was obvious that the system couldn't capture. And it's like, can you bring in and focus a system of something that can capture the skill? Some of the stuff might be soft skills, you know, it's very obvious to a teacher which students are emotionally intelligent, that actually has great life skills. So if you can individualize something in that way to start picking up these kind of like left field skills that actually mean a lot more to people in real life, how you do that, I think you probably know better than me.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, yeah, you're absolutely right about the individual point. And that's why technology is so important as part of that. Not just we need to, we don't need technology for technology's sake. And it's actually, technology is only good as if it's, being utilized properly. But it's just a facilitator to provide great teaching and great mentoring to an individual student that gets the most out of them. And actually we can save a load of teaching time and all the rest of it. And you made a really interesting point around, just trying to move the agenda forward, not by sort of like, with a carrot rather than a stick, not sort of just beating, sort of saying this is all rubbish and all the rest of it. And I think it's the same here, which is, and it's an interesting one, like, do you go super radical, or do you kind of incrementally, to start to improve things and lay a foundation? I mean, I think, taking it one step further, it's the whole political system that we won't go into now, but it's just successive governments coming in, short-term policies, like, another government could come in and then we've got a completely different policy. We need to like protect. I mean, what it's like with business or anything, it's got to be a 10+ year view and strategy.
Yeah.
And then it needs to be executed and followed through and properly funded. This constant chopping and change, right? I'm Prime Minister now, and I can change what, I've got these new initiatives. You can't keep up, and no one policy is necessarily better than the other. But if they're all rubbish, if you can't actually properly follow it through and have it implemented over, so if we want to make some of these big structural changes, I think we've got to go a layer above and look at how education policy is defined and set and protected, rather than politicians just coming in and just constantly chopping and changing. So, and then we might finally have a system that, as you say, can then target individual and get the most out of each individual student, because right now the system is just not doing that at all. And that's a massive problem. So, yeah.
I do see green shoots after the education system. Like, I think recruitment is starting to become very, very switched on to people who, because I think if you go back 10, 15 years, it was all about your grades. A little bit longer, it was all about your grades. And then it become about what your experiences and where you were the club, and did you have any sort of like leadership outside and stuff like that. But now I think recruiters, particularly specialist recruiters, are starting to get very good at being able to spot the skills of somebody that potentially hasn't got a grade for it.
Yeah.
So I do see a lot of green shoots.
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Kind of picking up on a point you said before about like, do we do radical or do we do step by step? I think the only way to go is step by step, because I think if you go too radical, somebody always steps up with resistance to that, because some people inherently dislike change. Even if the change is positive, they don't want it to be different to what they're used to. And even though sometimes they can't justify why they don't like the change, they will probably still resist it. So it's almost like you've got to creep towards it in a step that nobody minds the change. And then in 10, 15 years, you've come so far, but by small bits that haven't been resisted in the same way.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Recite Toolbar was launched 1.7 million times. And I'm going to not turn this into an advert for Recite, because it's 1.7.
No.
It's quite a big bit. But one of the things I probably want to concentrate on is, the disadvantages within the lower socioeconomic scale. One of the things that we're trying to do is that we've always tried to get the business to pay. So we want your content to be accessible. Don't expect dyslexic and visually impaired users to buy the software, because that isn't fair. And technically, it's incompatible with the Disability Discrimination Act, because the shift of focus has got to be on to this kind of the suppliers, the businesses. But if you that 1.7 million, and I just checked it before to make sure it was right, because it's like the number goes up every month. If you take that 1.7 million and you say 1.7 million people would have had to buy software if business and organizations didn't take responsibility like you're taking to make you, that's a massive cost to society of buying individual bits of software for each person for them to use.
Yes, absolutely. It's just huge. And I really don't understand why there's not more, more firms don't do it, to be honest. And there's just not more emphasis or more requirement for it. It's not really pushed push more significantly as an agenda. I mean, you know, sort of, I think of, for example, all the work we have to do on our website with making sure that our site is optimized for mobile usage, and really as well, you know, a big part of our acquisition is organic search. So, you know, people finding us on Google, and you know, we do this anyway, but Google's fantastic at keeping us, being a real hard like taskmaster on making sure that our site is fast to load and it's accessible and people can read it on whatever device and all the rest of it. You know, I mean, but you know, I'd love to see extra emphasis on those with learning difficulties being able to actually access it, and that coming more to the, you know, that they are actually the types of people who can really make a big impact. Just put it as part of their requirement, because that hits companies where it hurts. You know, if there's anything to do with you know, getting more traffic to their site, you know, if you're going to get more greater weighting because you've actually addressed some of these things, then you know, even better. But yeah, you're right, it's a huge milestone, and I'm not saying this, you know, I think it's a fantastic achievement what you've built. It's amazing, like what, you know, when we came to look at it, it really was a plug and play option for us, and it just suddenly opened up to, you know, just accessibility on just so many different levels. So, you know, you've got the translate tool. So, you know, we have obviously a lot of students in this country where, you know, English is not their first language. You know, that can stop them learning maths. They're really good at maths, but they, you know, if they're able to translate first, you know, just so many different examples within that, you know, huge usage figure. So yeah, it's super cool.
Well, Will, have a great day. Thanks so much for your time.
All right. Yeah, Ross, very nice to meet you. All the best.
See you, mate.
Take care.
This has been the Ross Linnett podcast, and thanks for joining us.